The meeting is now being YouTube.
Morning. I'd like to call the Association of Sea Pines Plantation Property Owners Board meeting to order. Dave, do we have a quorum?
Madam Chairman, we do have a quorum.
Okay. The minutes from the last meeting?
Does anyone have any revisions or amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Aye.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Paul, I suggest you have us raise our hands on that, just so it's visual.
All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Yeah, just as a.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to our second board meeting this year. For obvious reasons, the March board meeting was canceled. We are now conducting our May 14th board meeting, and our annual meeting is in the process of being rescheduled. I'd like to first welcome our YouTube followers and thank you all for being part of ASPPO's big digital revolution. So for those of you who haven't met him, Sam, you could turn your video on. I'd like to introduce Sam Bennett, our new president at CSA, who's been here for almost 5 months. And I think we all acknowledge that the ramp up on CSA is huge any day, particularly when our beloved covenants come into play as well. Came up close, and I think it's true. I can attest that Sam can really drink water from a fire hose and live to talk about it. So welcome, Sam.
Thank you very much, Paul.
As I've mentioned before, we're reviewing our budget and our business model. And I believe we're in for a little bit of a belt tightening. As you know, or may not know, CSA provides the administrative support to ASPPO, and we are charged for the presence of all the CSA staff that's at our meetings. So I am trying to keep the attendance at a minimum to the people that we really feel can participate each time. Otherwise, I'll get back to them with questions rather than take up their valuable time sitting through one of our meetings. We continue to keep the lines of communication open with CSA on the committee work and also a special focus on revenue enhancement. I was really gratified to hear that the CSA board approved investing $2.5 million in projects that cannot wait and should not wait until the revenue shortfall has been addressed. And one of the things that rang out to me at the CSA board meeting was that we've kind of got sort of a ticking clock around here each time it rains. Russell Fredericks was asked to rate our stormwater system, and he gave it about a 2 or a 3, and that was on a scale of a 10, 1 to 10. On another note, we're increasing communication with our membership. I hope you noticed that our board package was included with the agenda and published in advance of the meeting. And if you have any questions during this meeting that we can answer afterwards, please just email them to info@aspo.net and we will address them after the meeting. I'd also like to thank Larry and Lois Mufshin, Lee Stevens, Jane Gagan, Judy Ramsey, Joe DiGiulio, Michael Wolf, Dana Guazzo, and Barry Barth for their time and energies in helping us open scads of envelopes that we hoped contained member email addresses while we're trying to collect them. 2 envelopes went into the annual bill, one addressed to the bank and one addressed to us here. Check goes to the bank, email address comes here. Unfortunately, we received almost 500 ASPPO dues checks and one electric bill check too, I might add. It's addressed to ASPPO at Greenwood Drive. So clearly they didn't make it to the bank. I can only assume that we have an equal amount or more of email addresses that went to the bank, which is why we tried to have a second envelope to begin with. So onward and upward, we now have some emails to work with, but definitely not all. And we will be sending postcards out to ASPPO members, asking them to please share their email address with us so they can stay in touch with what's going on. Lastly, I'd like to mention that in the past few months, I've been contacted by 3 very different people who didn't know each other. And then I read an article in the Island Packet, all on the same topic, and that was low decibel leaf blowers. The noise pollution and air pollution affects us everywhere around here. The golf courses, landscaping maintenance, commercial entities, and our own residential streets. So ASPPPO cannot address the entire pollution issue single-handedly, but we will work the issue for our residential neighborhoods, and we'll talk more about that later. So thank you all for joining us. And Rich, if you want to give us a financial update.
Okay. I'm going to very briefly cover December, since that was so many months ago, and focus more on the March 31st. But as of December 31st, if you'll look at your financials, we have total investments, total cash on hand of around $82,000, investments of around $304,000. At that point, we had liabilities at year end of around $50,000.
I think we have a technical issue.
We lost Rich.
There he is. He's coming back on.
Sorry, I need to turn that off. Where I was we have total liabilities of around $398,000, of which $304,000 is in investments. And as of the end of 19, if you look at 18, because we're going to talk about this more, down at the bottom of the balance sheet, you'll see the member numbers. At the end of 2018, we had 3,808 members. At the end of 19, we had 3,580, a decrease of around 228 members, which I think is going to become an important part of our conversation later on. That was a decrease of around 4.5%. You're going to see as I talk about March that has materially improved so far in terms of loss of members, but that's still a key concern. We still have around 70% of our membership that participates, eligible property owners, and around 30% that does not. Part of that is communications. There are a number of issues wrapped in it that I'm sure will be talked about as you talk about our communications plan. If you take a look at the next page, and again, I'm going to be brief on this one to focus on March, but basically our total revenues for the year were $137,000, with the variance versus budget really occurring primarily in membership dues at $125,600 versus $133,000 that was budgeted. Our total expenses this year, or in 2019, were $144,000, with compared to $129,000 that had been budgeted in 18. Biggest variance in this was the election and the bylaws that we went through an extensive evaluation process on. That also drove the legal fees. So overall, we ended up still with a positive around $761. A short evening at Caligny Plaza, Richard Jr. But in any case, it was positive. If I focus more on the March 31st, if you go to the next page and focus a little bit more on this, because this is really more current, there is a heading on this that shows we said 136,000 in revenue year to date. The biggest single, this is the balance sheet. Biggest single thing is our Morgan Stanley was up. We had some maturities in investments that we have reinvested, but in any case, total investments around $304,000 at that point, and total liabilities and liabilities and fund balance of around $441,000. The key issue to ASPO, from my perspective, after 5 years as treasurer, is keeping income and expense in line, but extremely important that we maintain the investment portfolio that we have at an adequate level to allow us to represent the residential property owners. That number, when I started 5-6 years ago, was closer to $600,000. The majority of that difference was around the negotiations with the resort associated with their desire to expand, and us doing very extensive legal work on the rights of property owners under ASPO, and also the bylaw changes that were extensive that were done in last year for the overall residential property owners. If you look again at the bottom of this page, you'll see between 19 and 20, we've dropped about 60 members, or less than 1%, or about 1%. And one of the key issues, of course, strategically, that I think Paula will address is our need to increase both communications as well as the participation of the members. If you take a look at the next financial page, which is in small print, I did that for JR, so he couldn't read it. But
I got my glasses.
oh, you better get a bigger pair, JR. You and I are both getting older. We had 128,000. This is really more important, so I'm gonna slow down a little bit here. $128,000 in revenue versus 136,000 planned. 126,000 planned, excuse me. I'm having trouble reading it. And I've looked at them at length. But the big difference is about $2,000 or so in membership dues. That continues to be an ongoing issue for us to deal with. We have consistently overestimated actual membership levels. Hopefully that will change. If you look at our total expenses year to date through March 31st, around $34,000 compared to a budgeted number of around $44,000. The biggest variances in that were a service charge fee, which Paula has been working on in terms of accuracy. That expense level had gone up from previous years by $2,000 to $3,000, attributable to supposedly contributed to communications. And Paul has been having some discussions with the bank and others on that change. I would expect additional adjustments to be made in that number. The majority of our expenses, of course, insurance is recognized once a year and then amortized over the period. So our insurance costs have been relatively constant. Land use monitor, we have a full year coming up this year of land use monitor costs. And then our CSA fee, as Paul alluded to, we pay through March, we paid about $4,800 for that. The real thing in the budget to look at from my perspective and financials on income and expense is we have reallocated at the Paula's recommendation and the executive committee, and I'm in 100% agreement. We reallocated a number of miscellaneous categories of expenses to communications to allow us to get a platform in place and a tool in place to communicate more effectively with members. And I'll leave that discussion later on for Paula, but that's why you're seeing a lot of expense categories, public relations and others that are at zero. It's not that we're not spending money, it's that we've shifted the money towards that platform. Overall, year to date, we've got about 80 some odd thousand more in net income over expenses, and it compares favorably with the budget of last year. But the key issue for you as board members and for the community as a whole is that a major effort is being made this year, of course, on controlling expenses, but more importantly, on building a communications platform. And again, I'll save that for Paula discussion. The next page, which is more legible, because it involves our portfolio, is our investment ladder. We have investments, as you can see here, around $372,846,842. It's a ladder that matures. You'll see we have some investments yielding 2.7% that will mature in 2020 in July, and you'll see the ladder going out through 2025. This year, we reinvested some funds out in 2025. You'll notice that we've been able to maintain a pretty reasonable level of returns. Right now, the market returns on investments are in the 2% range, are actually pretty good. 3% is outstanding. But we have a policy of only investing in high quality governments and private sector funds. These are all individual companies that are highly rated. That's in order to maintain it. But we always have money maturing in case we need to dip into it or to use it for various purposes. That process was underway when I took over, and it continues through this day. And I will be in July of this year reinvesting $67,000 out into the future to maintain that position. I should point out that the current activities we have on relative to legal are addressed within our budget. Their primary focus on that is, of course, pursuing homeowner issue relative to a particular property. And I think that'll be covered in more detail under Land Use Management Committee report. With that said, I would ask for a motion. We don't approve financials, we accept them. I would have asked for, I don't remember the resolution number, Paula, a resolution to accept, I guess it's number, what number have you got? Number 5A. 5A. I would ask for a motion to accept the financial statements as of December 31st and as of March 31st. And I'm happy to answer any questions the board members have about that. So moved.
Anna?
I have a question, a couple of questions. Rich, you mentioned the legal costs with regard to litigating a property owner. Where is that line item in the budget?
It is not in there, but I'm just wanting to make the point that we have got that in terms of a line. Excuse me, I've got to flip to the right page instead of looking at the resolutions. If you take a look under legal and professional fees, right now that's at 0. We're not expecting any additional legal fees at this point associated with that.
Okay.
We of course have agreement. I don't want to, so I think we're fine on that, Dana. By the way, just for all the board members and any of the community, I haven't told Paul this, but I'm willing, if we want to, I'll be happy to set up a Zoom call and walk through the budget in grand and glorious detail by line. But the key issue here from us in a financial point of view, if I were to leave a message, is number one, maintaining a quality investment portfolio is what gives us the standing to the ability to stand on, for example, the legal actions we're taking or on any potential things we may need to do to protect owners. And the second thing is we run a pretty good balanced budget. We're reallocating now to significantly improve communications, which has not been done in the 5 years that I have been a member. There have been a number of efforts undertaken, write one newsletter, write one mailing, write one piece. They have been extremely ineffective. And I think the effort underway now is to professionalize that and make it significantly more organized. And third item I'd leave you with is our expense items that we have that remain are being scrutinized on a pretty regular basis. And you heard Paula reference CSA support costs. I was involved in the renegotiation of that a few years ago. I think it's quite reasonable, but I also think it's prudent for us to look at that on an ongoing basis. And that negotiation is something that comes up this year. But are there any other questions that the board member might have on Dana? Yes.
Just one other question, and I'm in complete agreement with all the things that you're talking about and saying in terms of where we're putting our money. But in terms of communications and Paula's efforts to do that, which she'll talk about later, can you just explain for me and whoever's listening where that appears on the budget?
It's really a combination of line items that we haven't spent, and I'd prefer to defer to Paula when we talk about the platform and the communications associated with that. But it basically is not a budgeted item. It's a reallocation of what is currently budgeted items that were approved. And so I don't have here a forecast, but Paula will talk about it. I've gone through it in detail with her. I'm extremely impressed. I said we ought to get a marketing professional that knew something about how to do that. And unfortunately, Paula seems to have all those skills. So in a serious note, on a serious note, all of us that worked through the election that was done, the referendum, that while we got a 72% odd vote, I have to say that Paula and a very small group of professional marketing people, Amanda included, I don't mean to leave Amanda out, really bootstrapped us through that effort. So I'm very confident in the recommendations that you're going to hear and the decisions that have been made. And I think the executive committee has shared that opinion. And so I may be a little smart on talking about Paula's experience, but it's extensive. And I think the program she outlined is also extensive. And so I don't want to get caught, but we basically reallocated a significant number of line items that if you look in the budget show no numbers spent to date, although they're budgeted. We basically have taken that money and put that into this communications effort.
Thank you.
So going forward, you're going to see actual numbers that have increased communications numbers in them.
I appreciate that explanation. I just felt it was important for everyone listening to also understand that. Thank
Bill,
you.
did you have a question?
I have a question. Just for clarification on excess revenues over expenses, we're almost 4,000 under what we were as of March 31st, 2019. One of the line item questions that I have are bank charges, and I know we're looking at this, but they've gone up 30, even though I thought they were aggressive last year, but they've gone up 35% in 3 months year to date.
Let me say, and then Paula can pick up, but when we, first of all, having set up and run cash management departments at banks, our lockbox fee for handling a $35 payment is, and it's at BB&T, so we're clear, is extremely high. In part, it's associated with what we're trying to do and separating things and the rest of it. The increase really is associated with an additional communication that Paula included that I will say, and I'll let Paula talk about it later, but clearly, I'll use the word misunderstanding. That's being politically correct in an era where nobody is politically correct. And she has worked very hard on getting that number rectified. And I think going forward, looking at alternatives that we can do on our site make a big difference to knowing it. But the increase is associated with their assertion that they incurred additional expenses associated with a communications. Now, I think Paula has pursued that. And she can comment. I think there will be.
Yeah, Rich, I'll help you
changes.
here.
Go ahead.
Victoria and I worked together on the annual billing, and she and I had a call last week to review some of the charges, and she's put a dispute in with the bank. So we'll see where that, how that works out.
I put my money on Paula. If I'm a betting person, and Victoria, because I've got a chance to look at the communications. It was pretty clear. And I actually think it got lost in the shuffle at BB&T. And for full disclosure, BB&T was a client of mine for 25 years. They generally do the right thing at the end. And so I'd be very surprised if that doesn't change going forward. But whatever we reduce that, I assure you, will end up being spent effectively in communications. So I really don't expect that we're going to have some major gain in profitability in our membership. I think it's much, much more important that whatever excess funds we have while we maintain our investments is invested in the communications discussion we're going to have in a couple minutes. Any other questions that I can answer about the financials? And again, I'm happy to set up a separate thing to go through in grand detail, but I think the decisions that have been made this year, the budget was in process before this year, before Paula really got fully involved in taking office. So the budget versus actual, when you see June and when you see the rest of this year, will be materially different than the budget, but that has to do with our reallocation of funds. Any other questions?
Have we voted? Should we call the vote?
No,
I made a motion, but
the board members, then I think there's a motion in a second. So I think Paula, the question is the vote.
Okay, all those in favor?
Raise your hand. Yeah.
Okay, we're good. Thank you. Thank you, Rich. Architectural Review Board, JR.
thank you. My report will be much shorter than Rich's report. Not as many numbers involved. I have in your packet the density report. I think it's changed by 2 units because there are 2 lots that were built on, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. The report that I usually give is the activity from January through April is 12 new single family units, 23 major renovations, 216 small renovations, 7 pools, 4 commercial permits, 2 new lots, as I just reported. And I was looking at that and wondering what was last year. And so I looked it up, and it's sort of amazing because this year, January through April, is larger and more activity than last year, which was supposed to be a big year. So I was, so we have, on the major homes, there was only 2, but additions and alterations were roughly the same. And then small renovations were up almost 100. So it's going to be a good year. I was also talking earlier on the meeting with some of the members, and 12 oceanfront, I think 13 oceanfront houses sold in Sea Pines in the last 2 months, which is kind of a remarkable amount of activity, which means we will get a lot of either renovations or redos of those houses. And so the real estate market and what we deal with is very progressive, and I'm happy to report that ARB is in good shape. That's it. Unless you have questions.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. Is the uptick in all of these properties and all the work that you anticipate to happen, is that going to require an adjustment in your resources, your staff, in terms of the people that you have on board to take care of all this, to make sure the property inspections are done?
No, I think we can handle I'll let you know when we need it, but the answer is I think our crew is pretty sharp. You know, the thing on our crew is that they are nearing retirement age and things like that. So one of my big expenses in the future for the ARB would be to have a trainee there to, which will be somewhat expensive, but someone's going to have to learn all the things that they do, and because they are really remarkable at the detail that they go to. And I'm really glad to have. I think the ARB is very happy to have Suzanne and Ken. But it's sometime in the next couple of years that one or both of them are going to be terming out. So we're going to have to deal with that. But I'm working on trying to figure out a plan for that now. But to answer your question specifically, I think we can handle at least 30% more business without doing anything with their inspectors and things like that.
One of the things that in land use management that we have concerns about in terms of ARB is the fact that people are under the misconception often that they, and I'm being generous, that they can do work without permit. So in order to catch that type of effort and stop it is a major part of what Ryan Cash does as he goes around and inspects things. But I'm just voicing some concern about that.
Well, I understand that's one of the reasons y'all are there to do that. We do it when we see it. When people do things that they're not supposed to do without our permission, people most of the time ask about the questions, painting their house, so on. You know, those small things that people do that they should come to the ARB. But generally, I think that 80 or 90%, I say 90% of the people that do those things do them in the proper manner. So it's a smaller amount, but we do have to catch them occasionally.
Yeah, and I'm not just concerned about the painting and things like that, but building docks, doing major construction sometimes starts taking place without proper approvals. I'm sure you're aware of that.
I don't know of occasion of that happening, but I think there was recently some issue of bulkhead being put in, but we caught it right as it. You can't do this project like that because DHEC notifies us when they have an application, and so they have to have DHEC approval for that. So somebody's going to report them, or we're going to catch them. So doing something that major. So usually it's minor things that are happening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, JR. Communications, Dave, would you like to?
Well, most of this is going to be tied into the discussion on the website and the email list building, because the biggest thing we have with communications and be able to do it is a manner of communicating with our membership, which we need email addresses so we can send out email messages and keep members current on what our thinking is. But also you'll see that I think the members will see who are watching this that the agenda and the board packet that was published in advance and the detailed explanation on finance that Rich has done is that there's a more open and revealing, method of treatment in all of the affairs that we do. And Paula has really been leading the website and dealing with methods, and as we've talked about them, on building this email list. But building the email list and getting the email address from basically everybody, every residential property owner in Sea Pines is a necessity so that we could reach out, one, to increase our membership and give relevance to the fact that there are issues that, ASPPPO can bring to their attention and get their opinions. And the idea is we want to get the opinions prior to action being taken. So the only way we can do that is to be able to communicate in an effective way. And that's what we're working on, but building that platform is taking time. And to that, I'll answer questions, but I think most of this will come up when we talk about the website. Anybody have any questions?
I would say this, since we do have folks that are watching this meeting, YouTube, whatever, and if they want to submit their email address and they don't feel that we have it, and therefore they're missing out on some communication they otherwise could have, is there an address that, or a way they could communicate that email address to us today or tomorrow?
Yes, it's the same address I had mentioned earlier. If people had questions for the board after the meeting, to use the email address info@aspo.net. And if you want to make sure that we have your email address, again, just send it to info@aspo.net. Thanks, Grover.
That's a good point.
Okay, on to land use management, Dana?
Thank you. We continue to be very busy. The Land Use Management Committee has met monthly throughout the year by virtual meetings. And at each meeting, we review the land use monitor, Ryan Cash's property inspection report. We help provide input and advice, or we learn from him, and we move forward to take action to try to accomplish our goals, which I will be talking about later. In addition to that, a smaller sub-team of the committee has been meeting to provide support as requested by Sam Bennett in the ongoing litigation effort against the owners of a problem property. In terms of Ryan Cash's property inspection report, for the month of April 9th to May 13th, he reports that he has issued 55 property violation notices. These are notices that relate to the upkeep and maintenance of residential property owners. So he issued 55 violation notices to property owners, and 49 violations were resolved between the months of mid-March and mid-May. Many of these violation resolutions concerned violations that had been previously issued, some of the 55, but also some of the previous ones. There are 7 additional properties that continue to remain in violation despite repeated efforts to solicit their resolution, that are in committee status that we are working to try to address in any way we can. He also likes to issue thank you letters to property owners who are doing an especially nice job of maintaining their properties. And he does that for about 15 different properties a month. This is his own personal initiative, which has gotten a lot of positive feedback from the community and has done a lot, I think, to build up positive relations with the community. In addition to all of that, he meets with property owners about complaints that he's received. He's been doing some supportive work on Beachview encroachment enforcement efforts, and he supports the ARB, and as we talked about earlier. So he stays pretty busy. And I want to make a point also that this is despite the fact that he has been unable to start working with a smart web software system application that would make his inspections and violation notice issuance much more effective and efficient. So he would be able to increase the violation notices that he is currently being issued. Moving on to the litigation efforts our committee is involved in, and that both is being financially supported by both CSA and ASPO. The summons and complaint were filed with the Beaufort County court system in May, and we received word from the attorneys that the owners were served the summons and complaint this week. In terms of other efforts that we're doing, we have been making efforts to try to update the 2000 rules and regulations that relate to land use management. The draft rules have been submitted for legal review, as well as the letters, the violation notice letters that are intended to be sent out via the software system. Also to clarify who has the authority to require residential property maintenance. And I have to report that is very close to nearing completion. I was allowed through Sam Bennett. Sam Bennett and I have been in close communication with Walt Nestor. And we had a very productive teleconference meeting just yesterday to finalize some of the information. It's about ready to bark, so I apologize if she does. So we we've been going over his legal counsel reports, his draft reports line by line. And we have reached, it's been very productive, and we are, as a committee, are ready to move forward, taking some of those recommendations to make some revisions on the documents that can be then submitted and discussed with Paula, you, and Larry, I believe, in the next steps. So we're very encouraged by the results of the legal review. It's been very helpful. And I think that the result is it's going to be very useful for the whole Sea Pines community. Walt Nestor's comment to me was he felt it was his opinion, in seeing the work that's been done, that the work of this committee is being done by very thoughtful and informed individuals. And it's vital work that's going to make the community better and was needed for a long time.
Thank you, Dana, very much. I would also like to say there was an oversight in the board package. Dana's report will come out with the board agenda in the future, not unlike JR's ARB report, so that we can see a status quantified with the numbers, and we can see. So sorry about that, Dana.
Okay. Also, we did submit the committee charter to the board for approval. I believe that's one of the resolutions. I don't know if you want to do that now or do it at a different time.
We can do that now while you're on the subject. Do you all have the charter, the draft charter in front of you?
Yeah, charter has been approved by CSA as well, because it's a joint committee.
Yes, thank you.
Any discussion?
I'd like to make a comment and possible amendment. I think after reading it in detail, that since the ARB is paying a third of the cost of the LUM committee, that a representative from the ARB, the chairman or someone he appoints, should be on the committee.
I'm sure you know this. I don't have a problem with that, JR. I just want to point out that we do have Lee Stevens on our committee, who sits in on all of the ARB meetings, I believe, and he has been a useful liaison with the ARB. Just so the community knows, we haven't ignored the ARB.
Oh, that wasn't the issue. The issue, I think he represents another entity, and the ARB should have its own entity representative on it. I think Lee's very capable, and I love having him there every week when we have our meetings, and he's added a lot to it. And we've had many conversations about LUM, and we pretty much agree on most everything about what y'all are doing. I just think that since the ARB is an independent agency or committee or whatever you want to call it, it should have a representative on the committee.
As the CSA rep, I'd agree with that. And I think Dana does too. I mean, that's, I have to say, having been the CSA representative on it, that the committee has drugged me along very well and convinced me. And I just wish Dana would be more outspoken and direct about what she thinks.
Really?
But her committee has been extraordinary. And I think having an ARB representative there will be useful and helpful for the committee, as well as CSA and ASPO.
And then finally, the other thing I felt like it's in here, but it's not in here, is that this committee serves at the discretion or approval of the board. And so all actions that are exercised by the LUM should be approved by the board. I mean, it's in there, but it's not in there. So I just thought it should be in there. Others may not feel that way. It's not that big of a deal, but I just think that it should be clear what the committees, who the committee works for.
And JR, you're referring to the CSA and ASPO boards?
Yes.
Okay. And Dave, you had a question or a thought?
We have two ways of handling this. One, we can go back and draft the language and not take any action today. or there can be a motion to approve the charter, and then JR can make a motion to amend it with those two things to be added to it, and then we can get it adopted today. So if there's a preference.
That would be I would agree with that approach. That would be simpler and quicker.
Well, if everyone's in agreement, I would say so also.
Okay.
Because I would make a motion that we amend it to those two things.
Well, we need to put the main motion on the
Put the
floor.
motion on the floor.
I move that we approve
Motion.
the charter as submitted. And then we'll
I'll
let
second.
JR.
I'd like some
Ned.
comment. I'd like clarification on your second. I get the ARB representative, but can you provide more specific wording in what you're suggesting should be put in here in terms of what we are authorized to do?
I'm not a lawyer, so I.
Dana.
Dana, my suggestion, Dana, would be the key word is policy, because there's a lot of administrative and implementation stuff that you really want to keep at the LUM level. So it would, policy changes or approval of policies, if we want to clarify, if I don't feel a need to clarify it, but if there is a need to clarify it, I would insert the word policies are approved by the board, because 90% of what the LUM is going to be doing is enforcing what's been agreed to.
I think if we just agree to an amendment and approve it that way, we can hammer out language later.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I don't know about you, Dana, but sometimes I like a little time to sleep on it, so.
Yeah, there's other CSA directors here too, but I feel comfortable in saying if we approve it as proposed right now, and then we approve JR's amendment, that we can work with the CSA to get the final wording the way everybody wants it.
And I would also like, just for not that the committee makes the decision, but for them to look at what your wording is. Because I understand, I think I understand your point, JR, but I'm in looking through the responsibilities, the purpose, and what we don't do. You're right, it's in there. It doesn't say that we're able to, it's just that we create protocols for recommendation. We evaluate and recommend for board approval. I mean, there's not a lot in there that we actually have power to do, except to provide insight. What we do have power to do is to monitor, to address land use management violations on a very limited level, but then provide oversight into protocols and procedures that the board has already approved.
Right. I agree. I just still think that it should be some statement in there that's very clear about what who the committee reports to. All the people on this board or on this committee are very talented, well-meaning people. You may not always be there, and there'll be other people that have different ideas. So I think the clearer it is, the better. That's just my thought process. Well,
I really think that I don't feel comfortable with approving an amendment if I don't have the wording in front of me. I would agree with considering an amendment, but approving it for now, but then of course, always looking at an amendment later. I don't have a problem with looking at an amendment. I'm not opposing that, but I don't want to make an approval of an amendment I haven't seen.
Right. I think JR is just suggesting his amendment is that we develop, more detailed wording for the approval process. That's all.
Yeah. Dave,
I personally want a lot of the daily activity within LUM, because administratively, we as boards, all of us as boards, don't have time to deal with all the stuff that LUM has. And I should say that Ryan who reports to Sam has to deal with. I mean, we don't need to get involved in that.
Can I make a recommendation then that we accept adding the recommendation to add the ARB representative now, and then to consider the wording for the other later? I mean, we can approve that separately, because I really would like to get an ARB rep on the committee. I think it would really help.
Dave, did you have anything to say before we move on?
Only if you're going to do what seems like it's been discussed, let's get the two people, the person who made the motion and who seconded the motion, to approve adding the amendment, which would be H, to the committee membership to be a person appointed by the ARB.
Which would mean, just so we're clear, that we have to go back to CSA to get their board approval at the next meeting for the amended. So my comment would stay the same, which is approve it as recommended right now, and then make the adjustments so we take it to both the ASPO and the CSA board.
My understanding, Rich, is that the charters do not have to be identical. Sandra, could you comment on that, please?
Well, I'm just because, yeah, I'm just, Sandra's CSA, I think whenever there's a conflict between charters and committees, it's opening ourselves up to all sorts of things. So I don't think there's any difficulty in getting CSA's approval of the charter that Dana and everybody and JR is suggesting. I'm just saying that we just have to go back at their next meeting, which is a month off, to get that approved. And I do think they're different, and I do think it's important that we operate, because LUM is a long-term permanent committee, that it be operating, both that everybody is viewing it the same way as JR just said. ARB is viewing it, CSA is viewing it, and ASPO is viewing it, not that they're slightly different.
Sandra, could you just fill us in, please?
Well, yes, thank you, Paula. In this case, there's actually two separate charters. It happens this year they are identical. They do not need to be. They're two separate entities with a committee charter for ASPO and a separate committee charter for CSA. So you need to approve ASPO's, as I said, which is identical this year to CSA's, but they're two separate entities, two separate charters.
Well, I think Rich is correct. I think this is so important that it needs to be identical, because we operate. CSA pays a third of it, ASPO pays a third of it, and ARB pays a third of it. And so they all should have equal thought processes.
Okay, so JR, you made the motion.
Made the motion and JR seconded it, I think.
Right.
Okay.
All right, let me make a stab at the amendment, and this would be pretty simple, and maybe Dana and JR would agree with this. But under purpose, just begin that line with the authority of the board, comma, to provide review and on with your normal wording. But just add that with the authority of the board.
I agree with that.
That's all we need.
I would accept that.
Yeah, I can agree with that too. And I just will bring it back to the CSA board for their approval. So that puts them all of us on exactly the same footing. I don't want to end up later on where there's some group that has a different set of opinions. I don't know, Barry. I'm looking at Barry staring at his sea pine. Were you in a balloon over sea pines there? Well, anyway, I guess it's. But any case,
Bill's in a balloon.
Bill's in a balloon. Barry,
let's get back to what we have so we can move on, because I think this is pretty straightforward. Grover, that was an excellent suggestion. So we want to approve the charter with the added language that it opens under purpose with the authority of the board, just black and white. And then with H under committee membership, that the ARB chairman or appointee would also be a member.
And with that, I ask for the question to be called.
Thank you, Dave.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Well, please, with just one question. The phrase "with the authority of the board," is that a plural or a singular?
Singular.
Board.
This is the ASPO charter.
Right.
Singular. Okay, I'm just clarifying.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You want hands raised, because that's
Yes.
really these days,
Dave,
unfortunately.
raise your hand. I think he already did. So, okay.
I
Grover.
did, but you just want to
Okay.
make sure the whole.
The motion passes. Well done. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm
And
quite comfortable we can get that motion approved at CSA. You've got several CSA people here, so I don't know if any of them disagree, but I think having all three charters be the same will make life much simpler for Lum going forward.
Yes.
Thank you, Rich. It's a good point.
Can I request, JR, that even though CSA hasn't had a chance to approve their version of this yet, we have a meeting, a very important meeting coming up next week on Wednesday, and we've got work ongoing this weekend that we're going to be working on virtually online. If you could assign somebody to do that, that would be really helpful.
You mean from our board?
From whoever you want to assign to be on this committee.
Okay, yeah, I'll be happy to do that. I'm not sure it'd be me or one of the other people. I hadn't thought about that part, but
Okay. If you could
I need
consider
another job. I need another job.
I'll tell you, JR, I'm going to warn you, you're going
That's
to
what
be
Leslie
really busy.
says.
That's why it's gonna be somebody. No.
It's got to
I'm
be
gonna point
somebody.
Rich.
It needs to be somebody who can give us time, right, Rich?
Yeah, for somebody who hasn't got, yeah.
Yeah, let me know when the meeting is, and I'll be happy to have someone there.
I will email you.
Not
Thank you.
me.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move unfinished business, an announcement up, because it's part of our next item of business. I want to announce that Tom McPhillips is the ASPPPO designee and liaison to work with the short-term rental committee. And I'd like to thank him very much for taking time out to attend the board meetings in order to bring us up to date. So I believe it's pretty much 1/3 of our properties, our rental properties. It's a critical issue for our homeowners. And Tom, I want to thank you very much for stepping up.
Thanks, Paula. As Paula mentioned, my name's Tom McPhillips. I'm been on the short-term rental committee for 3 years, serving with people like Bill Johnson, who has co-chaired it. Paula asked me to come and just speak a little bit about the short-term rental committee. And to do that, I think it's real important to just go over a little bit of background about how large the rentals are within our community, how significant they are to the owners within our community. As you guys know, there's approaching 5,900 units that are authorized within our community. And as of the last couple of years, the amount of rental units within the community was approaching 1,900. It was shy of that, but it was approaching 1,900. And when we talk about rental here, if you'll hear CSA staff talk about rental, these include a range. There could be people who just rent for the 1 week of heritage and the profit that brings to them. There are seasonal, or sometimes there's full year rentals that go along within the community. And at this latest CSA board meeting, if you attended, you heard Toby talk about how that's now up to 2,100. So pretty substantial increase over the last couple of years. So to Paula's point, you're in a ballpark of roughly 36% at this point of properties that are being rented on a short-term basis. And historically, the resort has indicated they manage about 400 to 450 of those homes, and there's a number of other rental communities involved doing it. And individuals rent their own properties through their various services that are available online, which you're all aware of. To give you a sense of the growth, although this isn't exactly equivalent, but it's directionally correct, in a CSA 2015 survey, property owners classifying themselves, about 20% of those responding to the survey classified themselves as rental property owners. So you can see there has been growth over time. And I think the CSA staff, Toby and others, if they were here and commenting, would say the same things, and I hope Bill would too. There is a charter that already exists for the committee. It is available online. There are a number of things available online, including committee notes that get posted online if you ever have any interest in looking at those and the details of what gets discussed, and I'll get to that in a moment. But in essence, what the short-term rental committee does is advises the CSA board in exercising its options. And its objectives really are around trying to get everybody, the renters, the rental property managers, the owners, to act in a consistent manner that's in the best interest of all the owners of Sea Pines plantations. And so you can imagine you have, every week you could have 1,500, 1,800 people, some familiar with the community, some not familiar with the community, descending on the community. And there needs to be established set of rules so that our community maintains the quality. The the property owners get the value they want out of their investment and are covering their expenses, whatever their objectives are. And the renters have a good quality experience that they want to come back to. So you need this committee is what I'm saying is essential because there will be from time to time conflicts that will occur or different opinions about how that might best be done. What the focus primarily is, in the last couple of years, there's been a huge effort. It was led by Bill and Beverly Searle to resolve parking. Okay, parking for people who wanted to go to the beach in particular, because our short-term rental properties, if you look at a map which CSA produced at one point, they're all over, as you know, the community. So they needed somewhere to go where they could park and they could get access to the beach in short order. And their cars would be safe, and they wouldn't have any fear of things being towed because they're parking in the wrong place. So that's when Lot 8 got developed and presented to the boards, and it's been a very positive step forward in my perspective. People can go there who are renters. It's a very short ride. There are 2 trolleys now servicing that. Well, with the exception of this year, which is a whole nother topic because of COVID-19. And last year, I think it was very successful. It was profitable. It covered the expenses and allowed for some improvements to occur. So that's really in the short term because of the crunch that's come around parking. Well, it's always been there, but I focus and desire to provide a better experience. That's where it's been. But it's long term, what it has also been really about is to giving renters, rental property owners, management companies, clear information about expectations, when they come here, information that will enhance their safety, things about wildlife, and not everybody lives in an alligator community where the residents include alligators, I should say. So it provides that type of information in particularly when it gets feedback from within the community or the people renting their properties also, what they've experienced. So right now, this year, the immediate focus was on what are we going to do about parking this year, given the disease that we've all been facing and all the rules out there. And they went through and made forwarded thoughts to the board through David Pardue, who's the chairman, for alternative parking and options moving forward about use of the trolley. So that's really this year itself has been really consumed this singular committee meeting that we've had. So that's, I want to thank Paula for the opportunity to speak about what the committee does. I think it's very valuable that you all stay in touch with it and connected to it moving forward, because it has the interest of a large percentage of the of this community based on the rentals.
A quick question for you. Thank you very much for that. Does the short-term rental committee or CSA have a formal line of communication with all the rental agencies? I know VRBO and Airbnb are a challenge, but if you absolutely had to get a message out to them, could it be done, or would a list have to be built?
No, and Bill and Amanda might want to comment too, because they're intimate knowledge with this. But no, they have direct lines of communications with not only the property management companies but property owners. Now, property owners are a little bit probably more challenging for them. You nailed it in Airbnb and, home away, those types of things are a little more difficult too. So Bill or Amanda, do you want to add anything to that?
I would. A couple things. First of all, Tom, I really appreciate you taking this role over. You've been instrumental for the last, as you said, several years in working and supporting short-term rental. And I think having you as liaison is wonderful for ASPPPO. Couple things. We meet twice a year with all the rental companies, and we also do this meeting virtually online so that the residents that don't use outside management companies can participate in this in these meetings, and they're very informative in getting pertinent data out to them. A couple of things that Tom had said that I might try to expand on a little bit is we've had extensive conversations about how you transport people to the beach utilizing the trolleys when we are trying to maintain a CDC compliance with the COVID-19. And we had a lot of not heated, but certainly in-depth conversations ranging from let's not run the trolleys at all to let's run them just the way we have been and just put a sign up that says everybody's entering at your own risk. And we ended up coming up with, I think it's a pretty good solution that, first of all, we require anyone riding the trolley to the beaches to wear masks. And secondly, we had limited the trolley occupancy to 50%. In addition, we're going to have hand sanitizers so that people can utilize that. And we're putting up, in order to protect our drivers, we're putting up plexiglass shields between the open cockpit area or the cockpit area and the open area of the trolleys. And Sam, you may want to further expand on my comments.
Happy to, Bill. Let me get mine back up. So the trolleys will start running Monday under those circumstances, just the beach shuttle trolleys to start. And we'll have 2 beach shuttle trolleys running from Lot 8. Toby and his team have done a fantastic job putting all the safety measures in place. Bill, I think you covered it very well. We will have additional hygiene protocols on there for the drivers. We will be requiring masks. We will be making masks available to folks that show up without a mask. We will have signage on the trolley. We'll have signage at the trolley stop explaining what's going on and what's happening with each route. And then our goal is over the course of the coming weeks is to put the other routes into service using the same model with the trolley system, with the beach trolley, with the signage. Trolleys will be running at 50% capacity, so there will be some social distancing. We'll be looking for family groups to get on the trolleys, all of those things. We're going to, in the email that's coming out this afternoon, we'll have a pretty in-depth explanation about what's going to occur and when everything's going to crank up. So everybody will get that this afternoon when it goes out. But Monday is the day. We appreciate the resort allowing us to continue to use the Beach Club parking lot, as well as Hilton Head Prep allowing us to use their parking lot for overflow. We have had some times where we had a number of folks in those parking lots since the trolley hasn't been available. So I think that pretty much covers it.
So, Amanda, do you want to add anything to to Paula's original question, the ability to get a hold of these property managers and owners?
Thanks, Tom. You did a great job recapping that information. Bill Johnson, thank you as well for your information related to the short-term rental managers meeting that we typically would hold in the either April to May timeframe, and then again in October. So we are in regular communication with our short-term property rental managers that are either companies or also our individual property owners that may rent their properties themselves. So if anybody from a CSA perspective would like to be contacted, if you're not already on that list related to CSA communications, they can reach out to CSA directly at info@csacpines.com to be added to that communication list. But we are in regular communications with those individual groups. Thanks again to all of you.
And I've found that it's a two-way communication, which is very important. You get feedback from the property managers, from the individual owners who rent, and then also pushing information out when changes occur. We got to get things out quickly.
Indeed, yes. And anytime somebody has a question related to CSA operations or any questions related to just community questions in general, CSA certainly is happy to answer those questions. And we certainly look forward to any feedback that the rental manager companies might have as well. So thanks again.
Thanks, Amanda. And that's it, Paula. That's all I've got.
Thank you very much. Dana, question?
Yes, thank you very much, Tom and Bill, for all the information. It's really important, I think, for our community. A few things I just want to bring to your attention. I'm sure you may be already aware of this, but I think given what I've seen in the community, and also my husband, who's a bicycle ambassador for Hilton Head, it's specifically Sea Pines, he has been very concerned, and also the other bicycle ambassadors have been concerned about the number of motorized motor assist bicycles that are being used in Sea Pines on the bike paths, on the beach, and on the roads, actually. And despite what South Carolina law may say, none of those are, even my dog is very upset about it. Gracie, shh.
So on that subject, and Sam, or I'm not sure if Toby was on, yeah, there is an actual rule. Those types of are not supposed to be operated inside of Sea Pines.
I'm aware that there are rules. I'm aware the bicycle rules of 2010 say refer to that to some degree, and it's in the gate entry policy.
Yeah.
For the sake of people listening in, I wanted to make sure that was brought up, and that's communicated somehow consistently with the owners who are renting their properties, because I don't think it's being somehow it's less and less it's being followed, and it really poses a hazard, especially on the bike paths. It's a serious hazard to all the families. The bike paths are crowded anyway, they're narrow, and the speed of those bicycles is just really unacceptable. So it's nothing I'm asking to be done that's new. I'm just wishing it to be brought to your attention. And also, I would like to make you aware of the fact that the Land Use Management Committee is working on, as I mentioned before, updating the land property maintenance rules, which in some cases impacts long-term rentals, short-term renters, in terms of the overall appearance of the property, picking up after their pets, things like that. So keep an eye out for that. And Sam is also working with security to update the safety and security rules, which would include bicycle pathways. So in the next few months, there's going to be, I think we'll see some changes in the rules and how they're made available to the community. And I look forward to being able to see that all the rules are much more visible to everyone, including our rental community.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Sam, did you want to say anything?
I appreciate Dana's comments. I know Amanda and her team do try and communicate those rules to our rental folks. We are working on some additional ways to do that. And Toby and his team absolutely enforce the no electric bike on the trails of Sea Pines when they run across someone who's more than likely inadvertently brought an electric bike and doesn't know what the rules are. But they do require compliance with that for electric bikes.
That some of the experience of some of the bicycle ambassadors, I can tell you that when they see this, they try to address that and at least inform the bicyclists, but they've been met with in some cases, really very negative, not very kind responses. seems to be an issue.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's certainly uncalled for, but I just as a share as personal experience, I was actually on a golf course, one of the resort golf courses the other day, and somebody came by on a skateboard. That thing was moving so fast. When I heard it, if I had turned in any direction and just moved, I probably would have been put on the ground. And seeing I just had 5 broken ribs recently, that would have been a painful experience. But yeah, I've thank you for the input. I'll certainly pass it on to the two co-chairs also. And it seems like Sam's already aware of that as an issue.
Fair enough. Thank you. We're going to move on to new business. We've got quite a few things going on here. The website is the first thing I wanted to mention. There were questions about, I believe, reallocating the budget. And Rich and I reviewed the budget, and there seemed to be several lines that looked more like plain placeholders than active investments that ASPO was making. One of them was property cleanup, which dated back a couple of years, where land use had asked for us to fund going in and cleaning up some properties. And forward, that is not the strategy that land use is using for any sort of enforcement. So that became available. The second line item was public relations, and this is a public relations item, so we decided to look there. Another line item was travel, and I couldn't figure out what the travel expenses would be since we're all here behind the gate, and I'm not going to any conferences, so we used that. We reallocated that to put together one budget that I'd like to call our little digital revolution and bring ASPO into the next century. So we are building a website. We hope to launch it this month. It will become a very critical intersection between our membership and the board. And we'll be using it and requesting that people go to the website to bring us information and what have you. What we're planning on including is a very simple, easy to navigate homepage, which has a call to action to join. It has one sentence on what we do, and it has several other headers, which is a page about us, a page on governance, information on board affairs, archives, and important links. And the links are to some of the more popular amenities and some of the services that come from CSA, as well as a link to ARB. It's just kind of right there at your fingertips. One of the two things, we will have buttons on the homepage. And one of the buttons will be join us, as I mentioned. The second button will be sort of be a part of the conversation, and click here to share your email with us. Learn about issues as they happen instead of after they're resolved. So that will be one tool that we'll be using. I'm sliding into the second part of new business, which is the email list build. People will be directed there. They will be directed if they, I would like to send out a postcard to the ASPO membership that has not provided their email, or they provided it and it went to the bank and got thrown away, or it went to the electric company instead of their check, who knows? And just invite them to either send us an email to info@aspo.net, or go to the website, check us out, see how we're doing, click the button and provide it there. So we'll see what the results are of that, and we'll be able to let you know. But I invite you at the end of the month to check in. The website would be aspo.net. Any questions on that? Any thoughts? Oh, thank you. Okay, good. The leaf blower task force, I had mentioned early on about these people that had never met each other and all had the same idea. And Grover, along with Bill Johnson, have volunteered to work with the task force on lowering our noise and air pollution in Sea Pines. Grover, did you want to?
Sure. Our president, Paula Scanlon, has created a task force, hearing that a lot of interest in having battery powered blowers in the Sea Pines community versus that of gas powered blowers. And so on that task force is, as Paula mentioned, is co-chaired by Bill Johnson and myself. Also serving is Gene Henry, Ron Thomas, Bing West, and Barry Barth. And what we're charged to do is research requiring battery powered blowers in Sea Pines community versus that of gas powered. Now, there are certain applications that that wouldn't work, but there are most applications it will. Today, battery technology, as you all know, has come a long, long ways. And the decimal level on a battery powered blower is so much less than that of gas, and the sound travels so much, does not travel as far. And so this is becoming a national trend that these are used versus the gas. And so what our task team has been doing and continuing to work on is doing a lot of research. We're researching other communities, what they've done, how they've applied it, what works, what doesn't work, what applications, how do you enforce it, et cetera. We're talking to the major landscape companies that operate within Sea Pines, and primarily there's 3 major ones that are in here, but there's probably 80 or 90 smaller ones that service all of our RPOs. But we are researching with the major ones. And we're also researching the specs comparison on blowers. And we'll come up with an appropriate decimal level that they cannot not exceed. What our goal is to do is to bring a recommendation to the board for the next meeting as to the application of the battery powered blowers. So this will be continued, and I appreciate all the hard work of those who are serving on the task team. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you very much. We had talked about this, and the research and the presentation would pretty much become like a business case for how it would work, why it would work. And then if the ASPPPO board approves, then we would flip it over to CSA, because this would be something that would have to come out of CSA. But the reason that I felt it was important for ASPPPO to take on is this is the very kind of issue that is that directly affects our homeowners. And it's something that we can do to improve their quality of life. And I know CSA is accountable for what I call boiling the ocean, which would be getting commercial involved, getting the resort involved. Our focus is strictly for the residential property owners. And I'd like to just thank everybody that brought it to our attention and the people that are working on it. We're very optimistic on the results. It's an issue whose time has come. So thank you, Grover.
Thank you.
Last order of business is the nominating committee for next year. And resolution 8D, we're recommending that Barry Barth and David Ellis be members of the nominating committee, and I would be the president. Let's see, would somebody like to move that? I don't think I can. Thank you, Bill. So moved. Second?
Second.
Dana, approved? All those in favor? Thank you. Sandra, keep us honest. have we covered all the resolutions that you have there?
Yes, Paula, that was the last one, to approval of the nominating committee.
Okay, we're good then. All right. Any thoughts before we adjourn? Thank you. Again, the address, if you have any email questions, email address would be info@aspo.net, and we'll take a 5-minute break and then come back and answer questions for a few minutes. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amanda, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. We're just still in our intermission before the Q&A session.
Can you tell how many people we had?
Yes, sir, we are still live. And our highest viewership rate was right at 20 people from what I can see.
Okay.
Right now, we're at about 17.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Amanda, I've got the questions here and I think we're ready to go. There were only 3 items. I don't know if that's a good thing. I hope so, that we had enough information streaming out. The first question is from Christopher Cliff, and it was regarding CSA litigation. And that is a question for CSA. And even though Sam is here, his role is as support to ASPO. So that needs to go directly to CSA. The second one was a thank you from Alex Cruden for making the board packet available to the ASPO public in advance of the board meeting. And the answer is you're welcome. We're happy to do it, and you will see that continuing. That was a Dave Ellis move, and we're very happy with it. The third one from Christopher Cliff regarding LUM. Does amendment mean with authority of the board before or after action decided by LUM? And I'm a little confused on that. What LUM does is with the authority of the board. There are some actions, Dana, I don't know, I mean, the committee, as any committee, operates under the authority of the board, period. So yeah. I'm not quite sure the question. I guess the answer is yes. And we're good. And that was the last question. So I think our business is over this morning. And we look forward. We may schedule another makeup meeting. I don't know if it's necessary or not. Otherwise, we will see you in September. So thank you very much.
Paula, so when is the next meeting you're saying?
September 24th.
If there is, I can tell you there may be some action that needs to be addressed before then by the Land Use Management Committee. Is it possible that a meeting could be called earlier?
We could call an executive session at any time of the board, and we could do it there. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Doesn't mean the business is going to go unattended, believe me.
No, I know that.
Dave, you had a.
For anybody still listening, please remember to send your email address just to make sure we have it.
Thank you.
And ASPO has 3 Ps.
Yes, it does. Okay. All right. We're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.